Good morning. Hello and welcome. My name is Afsane Alavi, and today our speaker is Nick Kindler. I had the privilege of working with Nick for the last 3 years. One of my best memories is traveling to Banff in Canada to one of his programs in speaker training, and also leadership. We are going to hear from Nick as he shares the principles of his book, Communication with Impact, focusing on both communication and innovation, the neuropsychology of storytelling, and the other techniques to help us how to connect with our audience every time we present. Nick is a keynote speaker, communication coach, a former actor, teacher, and comedian. For more than a decade, Nick was the founding partner, creative director, and the speaker coach at Engine Communication. Then in 2013, he joined TED Toronto for TED Talk as a coach, eventually taking on the role of director of programming in 2015. Nick is also the head of programming for Singularity Canada, a global learning and innovation company. I have to tell you that today you are in for a treat. Let's listen to Nick.
Well, thank you, Dr. Alavi, and for that wonderful introduction. And welcome, everybody. It is a thrill for me to be joining all of you here. I'm going to start just by kind of, as I'm used to in my programs, I'd like to share a few of the rules as I go through, and I'm wondering if as I go through each one of these rules, if you can find the chat feature and just say yes that you're in, that you agree to these rules as we go through. The rules are that you will share your thoughts and ideas as we go through. Yes, I'm going to be speaking, but I'm going to ask some questions, ask people some interaction with the audience. Can you do that? Let's just see if we can get a few people. Yes, thank you, Terry. Wonderful. Wonderful. I see a few people populating. The next is focus. These things here, I call them weapons of mass distraction. So if you can just take for the next hour, I know how busy everybody is, just turn off the messages and distractions and focus on the content, because I promise you there's valuable insights that I'm going to be sharing with you. This is going to sound very strange. The next rule is unlearn. And it's because we come, especially when it comes to communication, with preconceived notions of what we should be doing or how we should approach something. And not that those notions are incorrect, but I'd like you to think about putting those ideas on the shelf for now and just creating space for new concepts and new ideas to take hold. So that's the next one. The next rule is be bold. So when I ask you to share, if you jump in on the chat, share an idea, just share something, I want you to be bold. And I saw this recently, I love it. Be bold, or italic, never regular. So today, let's be bold. And my final rule, this is a really tough one to follow, have fun. I do want you to have fun. I want you to enjoy yourself. We are going to be covering some interesting content, and it's going to be quite fun in nature. I'm going to make it energetic, and I'm going to try and engage people as we go along. So let's dive in. So first of all, welcome. I want to thank you for all being here. I know how busy everyone is. And I would like to ask everyone to put their cameras on, if at all possible, and ensure that your name is in there. If you click on the top three corners. You should have three dots. You should be able to put your name on. But put your camera on so I can see you as I go through this presentation. I'd also like you to put into the chat where you're from, because I understand that we have people from all over the world here. So please drop into your chat your name and where you're from and your healthcare role or title if you can. So perfect. I see you. I'm from Canada. Excellent. Oh, Elizabeth from New York. Wonderful. Welcome. Australia. Terry. Wonderful. Yes, good to see you. Fantastic. And wonderful. From Bahrain. We've got from South Africa. Wonderful. And I'm still going to populate. What I'd like to do is, the reason I like to see this, and we have different people from different healthcare roles from all around the world. And this is really one of the wonderful aspects of this incredible organization, the World Union of Wound Health. And I think it's just fantastic. And I'm so thrilled to have all of you here. Now, let me share. Afsana did a terrific job explaining who I am. I'm not going to do that, but I want to explain why I do what I do as we go into the principles today. Well, first of all, I wrote this book and everything called Impact, and everything that I'm going to share with you today are based on the principles I share in that book, as well as in the programs that I run. Now, why did I write it? I run a company that inspires, educates, and empowers leaders to create a better world through improved communication. And basically what we do is we provide coaching services, coaching experiences that help those leaders become better communicators. And why? Why do I do that? Why is it focused on communication? Because I believe it's not money that makes the world go round, it's communication. And I'd like to start by sharing a brief story about a young regenerative research scientist that I was working with not long ago by the name of Laura. And I was helping her develop a presentation based on her research. It was in partnership with Mars here in Canada, in Toronto, and an organization through Mars and U of T called Medicine by Design, which is looking at the commercialization of regenerative research and all of the focus of that program is helping regenerative scientists learn how to commercialize and learn how to take advantage of what they've developed to date. But in this part of the program, I was helping a whole cohort of leaders develop their presentations on their research. And when I was working with Laura on this day, I was stuck because we were having a hard time getting her to articulate what we call the purpose statement of her talk. And she kept telling me passionately about specific readings and measurements, which, as I'm not a regenerative scientist, didn't mean a lot to me. But we had a limited number of sessions. So I decided to change things up a little bit. When I'm stuck, I kind of go to a completely different route. And I asked her to tell me about her workday. What do you do from the moment you get into the office to the moment you leave? And she told me that she arrives at her lab at around 7:30 in the morning, and she checks the readings and measurements to ensure that nothing had changed overnight, and that the regenerated pancreas was still operational. And I paused her at that moment and I said, can you repeat that last part? I wanted to make sure that I hadn't misheard her. And so she said, I checked the readings and measurements to make sure that nothing had changed overnight. And I checked the regenerated pancreas. And smiling, I asked her if this was novel, like this regenerated pancreas. I said, she looked at me like I was a dummy. she and like I was joking, I said, I didn't know that it was possible to regenerate a pancreas. And she said, oh, that's been happening for quite a while now. She said, it's not the challenge isn't regenerating the pancreas. The challenge is vascularizing the pancreas so that it works within the system of the body. And she said, that's the part of the research that we're working on. And just like that, we had a breakthrough. Her work continues, but we had a breakthrough because that was the purpose of her research right there, vascularizing the pancreas so that it could work within the system of the body. And of course, if Laura and her research team can do this, looks like we've got a question from Rami. Rami, if you just hold on for one moment, I'll take questions in just a moment. And now, if we have, of course, if she can do this, that the pancreas, as you know, it produces insulin, she can help find a cure for diabetes, which, as we know, causes millions, or at least 1.6 million deaths worldwide. More than 451 million people live with diabetes, and it's a complex, challenging problem that she and her team are working on. Now, I just wanted to pause here because I'm not in the sciences space. I work with scientists and technologists. I work with specialists. And while I'd worked with regenerative scientists for a number of years at this point, I actually didn't know that we could regenerate a pancreas. And this was what, got us to where we needed to get to. I have a question for all of you, and this is a different sort of audience, but how many people knew that you could regenerate a pancreas in this audience? Can you just give me a yes or a no? Be honest here. Remember, I asked you to be bold. If you can put it on the chat, that would be great. Let me know. So Terry, yes, you knew, of course. Okay. Yes, okay. And then there's a number of folks that didn't know. And I just want to point out here that this is a healthcare community here. It's a healthcare group. When I deliver this kind of content to non-medical specialists, to technologists, to academics in other areas, 90% of the group or the room doesn't know that this is possible. And I actually think this is a shame, because we should know that this is happening. We should know that this kind of innovation is taking place. And I would argue that there's lots of aspects of the work that you do, whether you're in regenerative science or not, that we should know about. Your work is important too. So I would say replace regenerative scientists with physician or specialist, wound care nurse, or you could be a dermatologist or an ophthalmologist, but whatever your specialty care area is, or whatever your area of focus is, it's important. And I guess the question I have, or that I want to raise for all of you as we dive into the principles, is, do you understand the impact, the real impact that your work can have on the world? Are you able, and if you do understand that, are you able to articulate that potential impact? Do your teams, do your clients or customers or patients or your community understand that impact? Do they understand exactly what it is that you do? And this is actually part of the issue that not just leaders in healthcare, but leaders in every industry are facing. All leaders have the same three problems. And I did a non-scientific survey, meaning I picked up the phone and spoke to about 15 to 20 leaders of my client base about a year ago when COVID started sweeping in. And I wanted to talk to them about not just about check in and see how they were doing, but I wanted to check in and ask them about what are the big top three problems. And the top three problems, they all had different answers. But when you categorize them and group those answers together, they literally became three themes. And the first was time. Leaders are time starved. They don't have enough time or enough space in their day to truly sit, think, articulate their their purpose, articulate a vision, or focus and articulate concepts and ideas around the issues that can help differentiate them in their workday. Just let me know if you, by giving me a show of hands or a yes or a no, if you can relate to this one. If you just feel time starved. Yeah, I think it's a universal truth. Thank you, Dr. Alavi. And the second is a lack of a clear message. Leaders who are experts, subject matter experts, or who lead experts and have a real challenge helping those who understand their message or their unique point of view. Let me know if you have that perspective, but you don't have enough time to get clear on your messaging. And then third is, and it's kind of a compound thing, if you don't have enough time to sit and think, you don't have enough time to get clear and articulate, then it affects your leadership. Now, I just want to be clear here. I'm not saying that this makes you a poor leader. What it means is it doesn't allow you to be the leader that you can be by getting really clear and articulating the business or the impact that you can have. And when you don't have the clarity, when you don't have the time, you are not able to communicate in a way. So leaders need to be seen, leaders need to be heard, but most importantly, leaders need to be understood by the people that they're communicating with. So these are the issues that are universal. And I want to share with you 3 principles from my book that will help unpack a little bit of these problems and help solve some of these problems. And after working for over 20 to 25 years now in this communication field, I'm going to share with you how to communicate even the most complex content easily and confidently. And also, because this is a webinar, I wanted to offer you, if you stay until the end, I'm going to give people a chance to win a copy of my book. And I thought I would give away 3 sessions, coaching sessions, to individuals who raise their hand throughout. So we're going to kind of put those names in a draw at the end, and we'll choose those names. And I'm going to ask my production partners from the organization to help me out. So let's dive in. What do most people do when they get ready to present? What do most people do? Well, what most people do is they think about getting ready for a PowerPoint presentation. They open up a PowerPoint, then they open up another PowerPoint, then they combine slides, right? They take one slide and another slide, and they put them all together. And then often what they call wing it. They just go, I got it. I put it all together. I've got all the content. Can I just see I'm going to see if I can see people on camera. I can't because I'm in we're in a different kind of Zoom. Can I just see on your chat if this is something that you've done? Be honest. And I've done it. Have you ever opened a PowerPoint, another PowerPoint, combined the PowerPoint to save time to get you started on whatever deck you're going to create? Let's see. Yes, it's a universal truth. Okay, fair enough. Terry says only in emergency. I'm glad to hear that. So I'm going to share with you the first principle right now and then I'm going to share with you some actual techniques and tools, and I'm going to give you all links to all of this stuff as we go through as well, so that you can use these long after we're done. So the first principle is to simplify, and anything can be simplified and made accessible if you use structure. And I want to share this story. A few weeks back, I was out for a run, and this is the Bloor Viaduct Bridge here in Toronto. It's just a few blocks from my home, and I was out for a run underneath this bridge. And it's a beautiful bridge here in Toronto. In the evenings, it's all lit up. It is just a gorgeous feat of engineering. But I was about 2 kilometers from home on this run, and unfortunately I'd injured myself. So I'd walked under the bridge and I was walking home, and all of a sudden a gentleman on a bike was coming towards me, and he slowed down and he said, "Would you mind taking a photo of me?" And I said, "No problem." And then he said, "Could you take it with the bridge in the background?" And I said, "Sure, no problem." And then he said, "I'm going to get on my bike and I'm going to ride towards the bridge. Then I'm going to turn around and I want you to take a photo of me on my bike with the bridge in the background." I said, "Okay." And at this point, I'm kind of trying not to giggle because I find the amount of instructions he was giving me quite a lot. But then he says one last time, he looks at me and he hands me the phone. He says, "I'm going to ride that way, and then I'm going to ride towards you, and I want you to take a photo of me with the bridge in the background, and I want you to take as many as possible, both portrait and in landscape." And I said, "Okay." And I had his phone, and off he went, and he disappeared around the corner. Now, I am a bit of I have a mischievous streak, and so what I really wanted to do was take a bunch of selfies, but before I did, he started coming towards me, and I got down and I kind of got in position and click, 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 click. I took as many photos as I could of him on his bike coming towards me with the bridge in the background in portrait and in landscape. Now, I found the whole thing quite amusing, but I did exactly what he asked. And I'm glad I didn't take those selfies because he took the phone from me and he surveyed my work. And I walked away, he thanked me, off he went, and I went home chuckling. And I thought, this gentleman used structure and repetition to get exactly what he wanted. He was clear in his communication. Now, I want to just make the case for structure and show you a structure, but let's just use the case for getting ready in the morning. When I put this shirt on and this jacket on this morning, I didn't go to a big pile of clothes lying in the middle of the floor. I went to my closet. And this is not my closet, by the way, although I'd loved, a cowboy hat. I think that would be a lot of fun to have, or some cowboy boots. But no, this is what we do. It saves us time. It hangs information, or it hangs content for us, shirts, jackets, ties, belts, so that we can access them easily. But when we approach our own content, we do things a little differently. Often people just build an opening, welcome, credentials, info, then the middle has support, data, stories, facts, and quotes, and then they close quickly and abruptly. And sometimes it's, now I'm going to close, I'm going to signal that I'm going to do this. And then if you're lucky, they'll provide next steps. So let me share with you the structure of the communication canvas. And this is a structure that works very, very well to help you get clear on a pitch, on a presentation, on an update, on any kind of meeting, because it gives you the structure to get really, really clear. Let me walk you through it. We always start with a lean in moment. Now, a lean in moment is kind of what it sounds like. It gets people leaning in and listening. Today, I started with my story about Laura, the regenerative scientist. I told a story about working with her that I was hoping would get you interested. All of you are in the healthcare field. It presented a story about my learning, but most importantly, it presented a case for why communicating with impact is important, which is the next part of the canvas, which is purpose. We need to share why we are here. We need to share what I call the what, the how, and the why. What do you want people to take away? And without this purpose, you truly you're not ready to create a talk. Now, we don't have time to go into this today, but there is a whole other exercise that is used to dive into the what, how, why, which I call the 3-step purpose practice. And again, it's all outlined in my book, and I'm also happy to share more with you afterwards if we have time in the Q&A. But this process is vital, and it's actually the first thing that you work on, develop, before you decide what you're going to share as a story or a lean-in. Now, after this, you have your essential message number one. Your essential message number one is really one of those big umbrella statements, concepts that is going to reinforce that purpose. But underneath that, you have your support. And this is where you can put your data, your facts, anything that is pertinent to essential message number one that will reinforce that purpose. Now, one of the things that may be interesting to you is the next part, which is your most important point, or your MIP. Your most important point is literally taking something from your support for essential message number one. What's that most important takeaway? And you reiterate it. That's right, you say it again. There's a phrase in communications, which is tell them again, and then tell them what you told them. And this is one of the first times in this canvas that you'll see that put into practice. So you have your essential message, all the support, data, facts, and even stories that reinforce that essential message, and then your most important point. And then you move into your second essential message, your second support, and your second most important point, and third, and so on. Now, there is a general rule of threes. People remember things in threes. It's easier to digest information in threes. If you start to move into 4, 5, 6, 7 essential messages and the columns go on, it can become onerous and hard for people to remember and to retain that information. Remember, we want people not just to understand it, but retain it so that they can continue to use that information moving forward. And then finally, so let me just reiterate here. I'm going to back up. We start with our lean in, we move into our purpose. Let me see if I can move it over here. We start with our lean in, move into our purpose, and then we kind of zigzag across, and then we move into our close. And this is where we do one more kind of reiteration, which is we might refer back to that lean in. We might refer back to our opening story or tell another story that connects back to it as well. You could also reiterate that purpose statement so that people can really drive home that message. And finally, end with a call to action. 46% of employees rarely leave a meeting knowing what to do next. So we need to be able to finish with clear, definitive action. So this is the communication canvas, and it's really one of the key structures to help you build simplicity in your communications. And if you go to impactbook.ca/tools, and I'm going to post all the links at the very end, you'll be able to access different downloadable tools, including the communication canvas. I'm offering that to everybody today. So the secret of structure is vital. And we have worked with hundreds of leaders, including Clint Mullman, who's here in Canada at the London Drugs. He's their chief operating officer and president. He uses the program to get clear on his messaging. Dr. Molly Shoykit is a woman that I worked with. She's the former chief scientist of Ontario. I had the pleasure of coaching her at her TEDx talk and working with a number of her engineering and regenerative science students. The national director for innovation at Deloitte. This is one quote, and I share this because he has English as a second language, and what he found was the program helped him get really clear and cut through the clutter of cursive knowledge. And that is one of the most beautiful ways I've heard somebody explain brilliant leaders, the clutter of cursive knowledge. So this canvas allows you to get really, really clear. Now, I'd like to share the second principle, which is transform. And transforming is all about narrative. It's all about language. It's all about storytelling. And so all content can be made more engaging if you embrace storytelling techniques. Now, let me ask all of you a quick question. If I were to, if everyone can answer the following question: what percentage of information is retained on average when it's shared as a story, when it's told as a story? What percentage? Drop it in. Let me know your thoughts. And remember, I'm going to be taking the names from here. We're going to be choosing one at random for a book. There we go. Terry says 5%, Maddie 80%, Elizabeth 30%. Hiske is saying 75%. Excellent. Okay, here is the correct answer. So we had a few people who are close. Jing is bang on. 60 to 70% of information is retained when it is told as a story. And let me explain to you a little bit more about this, what's going on. Now, again, I'm not a neuroscientist. In writing my book, I wanted to do a lot of research. So I looked out in the field of neuroscience to discover what was being done in terms of storytelling. Well said, Rami. It really does depend on how interesting the story is. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about that in just a moment. Stories have a huge impact on the brain. And I want you to think about the fact that we can either have 2 areas of the brain working for us, or 7 let me try that again, 2 areas of the brain working for us, or 7 areas of the brain working for us when we're presenting, meaning working in the minds of the listener. Now, there are 2 areas of the brain that are kind of fully operational when we are sharing data, presenting facts and figures. That's Wernicke's area, which focuses on language comprehension, and Broca's area, which focuses on language processing. Now, when we tell stories, there are 7 areas of the brain that are activated. So, for example, during tense moments of a story, our brains produce a stress hormone called cortisol, which I'm sure many of you know that all about. And this allows us to focus. It actually taps into kind of our prehistoric nature, where we are out hunting and we might hear something, and so we need to focus. But that actually has an impact on our brain when we're telling a story. Other research shows that when we're telling a happy ending to a story, it triggers the limbic system, our brain's reward center, and it releases dopamine, which makes us feel more hopeful and optimistic. There was an interesting study in Brain and Language magazine, Brain and Language, I should say, that showed when subjects in a lab read a metaphor involving texture, the sensory cortex responsible for perceiving texture through touch became active, while metaphors like the singer had a velvet voice or he had leathery hands roused the sensory cortex. Phrases matched for meaning, such as the singer had a nice voice or he had strong hands, did not. So language and storytelling have a huge impact. And, Remy said, depends on how interesting the story is. Well, part of what the challenge is we aren't really trained in how to tell a story. We know what stories sound good. And sometimes we might even try and copy sharing a story or share a similar story, and it just falls flat. I know I've experienced that before, and I'm sure we've all been there, where we've been in a cocktail party or a social situation, someone tells a story, dinner party, and someone tells another story, and you think, oh, I'll share this story, and for whatever reason, it falls flat on the table or on the ground. Well, this tool that I'm sharing with you right now will help change that. And I'm just going to double check my timing here. Oh, we're perfect. Excellent. We're great, right on schedule. So the story spine is not something that I've created. It was created by a playwright by the name of Ken Adams back in 1991. And he used this technique to actually write full-length plays. But since then, the story spine has been used by improvisers and creators and storytellers. But more importantly, I'd like to point out that it's been adapted by the movie studio Pixar. Pixar has earned about $14 billion in revenue worldwide. It started way back in 1995 with Toy Story. It won the Oscar this year for Best Animated Feature for Soul. Every single movie that Pixar produces uses the story spine as its litmus test to make sure that it is working. So here's what the story spine is. The story spine is simply filling in a series of steps. It starts like this. Let me try and get this. There we go. Once upon a time, there is a character. And every day that character has a routine. They do it over and over every day until one day that routine is broken. Because of that, there are consequences. And because of that, there are consequences. And because of that, there are consequences until finally there's success or failure. And ever since then, they've had a new routine. Now, we can look at this from a story perspective. Use Toy Story, for example. If you're familiar with the movie, once upon a time, there was a toy named Woody, and every day he played with his owner, Andy. And one day, Andy brings a new toy home named Buzz Lightyear. And because of that, Woody gets jealous. And because of that, he runs away. And because of that, all the toys go and find Woody and convince him to come home until finally he realizes he can play with both Woody, with Buzz Lightyear and Andy. And ever since then, they've played together happily ever after. Now, here's what I'll share with all of you is, don't be afraid of the fact that I'm using stories, and don't be afraid of the fact that I'm talking about Toy Story. This model can be used to create any story. It can be about Nick. It can be about a company. It can be about a procedure that is done every day. When I introduced this to a group of ophthalmologists, I had one gentleman, a senior ophthalmologist, with his arms crossed, looking at me on day one of this 3-day retreat. And on day 3, final day of the retreat, he said, my next presentation is going to include the story of Spider-Man, because as surgeons, we have great power, and with great power comes great responsibility. So he was actually embracing the far side of creativity and storytelling by integrating other ideas and other stories, but you can use this to tell any story. And here's why. Here's why. It includes 5 key story elements. And these are the things that, as Rami said, it depends on how interesting the story is. If it's not an interesting story, it's missing one of these 5 elements: environment, characters, conflict, stakes, meaning the conflict gets raised, not just one conflict, but raised conflict. And then a conclusion, what happens? And if you have these elements, the story will work. Now, I've shared this content in much more detail with lots of folks around the world. Not long ago, I had a chance to work with Dr. Sen from the National Institute of Health, and she found the storytelling aspect in particular very helpful. And I also recently received this note from Dr. Hunter on LinkedIn about how I worked with his group at Boston Children's Hospital to teach faculty to take their presentation skills to the next level. I remember working with him on his talk on amblyopia, and working with a child and who used to cover their face. He told the story in such a tender way, and it was the first time he'd ever used this kind of storytelling techniques, and he was able to take a continuing medical education program and course and turn it into a much more interesting experience for the learners. So that's the second principle: transform, embrace storytelling, embrace language. The third principle is something that is very logical, but hard to embrace. And especially in this world of virtual delivery and virtual presentations. And that is, think like a performer. We need to perform every time. Every time we are asked to share our ideas, either on camera or in person, we need to think like a performer. And because how you look and how you sound in front of an audience, whether it's virtual or not, can account up to 65% of the message that the audience receives. And there's lots of content I could share with you here today on voice and facial expressions, on gestures and body language, but I want to share one important differentiating factor that you can use. And it's all based on the word status. Now, if I can ask everybody to be bold and share again, what does the word status mean to you? If I use the word status, because it means something different to everybody, but drop it into the chat. I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. And remember, I'm going to be picking a name. We're going to be picking a name from the list of participants for the book, and as well as for the 3 coaching sessions at the end. How are we doing? Let's see here. What does status mean to you? Value. Thank you, Maddie. Value. Maddie, can I ask you to go on camera and on turn your sound on so I can hear why you say value, and if not, that's okay. You can back out. Terry, hierarchy. Excellent. Can I hear from Maddie? Can I hear from you for a second? Oh. Okay, I'm gonna move on then because I want to make sure. How about Terry? Terry, can I hear about why you said hierarchy? Is that okay? Terry, can you come on camera or speak? Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Terry.
Well, status, as I said, hierarchy. When you hear people and they have a high status in the community, if you're looking at a conference program, you may go to them because of their status in the wound community, their publications, etc.
Perfect. Yeah, so thank you so much, Terry. I appreciate your participation. So the status, the hierarchy, how they're regarded professionally, is that a fair paraphrase?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you, Terry. And there's other words that people have shared: position, respect. And I think it's really important that we talk about status when it comes to presentations, because think of all these words that we've just seen: value, hierarchy, position, respect. And yet we don't really think about necessarily, we think about perhaps, how do I look in the mirror? And then we go on and we sit in front of our computers. Well, I want to share this idea of status. I'd like you to think of it as the position of your body on screen, on stage, or in the boardroom. Think of status like a scale, 1 being low and 10 being high. And when you have low status, all kinds of things happen to your physicality. Low status shows slumped shoulders, chin down, no eye contact, and also you're lower to the ground, literally lower to the ground, and you're asymmetrical, meaning even though my hands, I've been quite symmetrical in how I deliver, but if I'm like this or like this, it changes the way people view me. Now, of course, if you look at the top end of the scale, physical indicators of high status are shoulders back, straight back, you've got a straight chin, I'm making eye contact, there's symmetry in the arms and legs. Now, when I do this in my workshops, we literally have status parties. I know it sounds very odd, but it's important to see and feel what lower status looks like, because we get pulled down into lower status because of our environment, because of things that are happening in our world. We may have had a disagreement with our partner. We may have received bad news just before I jump on a Zoom from a text message. That will impact our status. And so we need to be able to look and say, using the scale model as an approach, you can say, where do I want to be? And where do I want, so I want to be an 8 or a 9 today. And you can say, where do I actually look like I am right now? Now, I'm going to say one last thing about this before we kind of move into the final stretch, which is you have to ask yourself, how do I want to show up? Especially in the virtual presentations. And it's one of the reasons why I ask people to turn their cameras on. I want to be able to see faces. But when we are set up with a camera, we can sometimes, and I'm just going to change this, we sometimes come in and our cameras, because our laptops are down on the table, we look like this. Well, this forces us to bring our heads down and change our status. So think about how you want to set up. And in my programs and in my book, I even talk about how we can set ourselves up technically, and even quick cheats that you can do to make yourself more successful in a virtual format as well. I want to share a couple of quick things with you. One is about, oh, Terry said we can't turn on our camera. My apologies. Okay, thank you for sharing that. John is an ophthalmologist who I worked with, but I actually didn't work with him as an ophthalmologist. He's a cryptocurrency enthusiast and economist. I would say closet economist, but he's doing a lot of work in this space. And he simplified using structure, using the communication canvas. He transformed a very complex content using about developing a brand new cryptocurrency using AI that could be embraced by the globe. And then he was able to perform and deliver this presentation using gesture, status, and a whole bunch of other techniques. And he came to me, and I have it on video, but I'll share the quote, which is, before the meeting, he used the framework, he rehearsed, he presented, and the client said, I'd never heard anyone explain something so complicated so clearly. So it worked like a gem. And he had this huge roaring laugh as he shared it. It was fantastic. And what he did when he was able to do that is communicate with impact. And I'm just going to summarize what we've talked about here today. When you communicate with impact, you're embracing the principle of simplification, and more importantly, simplifying using structure. And then when you embrace transformation, it's using storytelling and language and rhetorical devices and making an emotional connection with your audience. And when you do that, you're able to create accessibility. And then when you use performance techniques and mindset, you're able to create a deeper understanding and of course, a connection with your audience, which is what we're always trying to do, whether, again, we're virtual or not. And it's when you bring all of this together that you have impact. So I've just shared the basics, the fundamentals from my work and from the book that I've written. And we've covered simplifying with structure, the communication canvas, the neuroscience of storytelling, the story spine. We've looked at the mindset of performance with body language and status, and of course, setting up your space I talked about very briefly. I guess my question to all of you is, before we dive into the question and answer period, which I want to spend time for, can I share with you something that I've developed for leaders that is available for people to participate online? Have I earned that right, that opportunity? Can I share that with all of you? A couple of things, just to put it in a yes or a no. Yes, please. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. I always want to make sure that I've got the green light from my audience. Thank you. I've developed a program based on my book, based on my years of work as a coach and as a facilitator in working with Singularity University and certifying those speakers. And it's called the Impact Accelerator. Remember, there are three problems that leaders are facing. It's time, clarity, and leadership. And so this program is designed to help leaders save time, get clear, and stand out as a leader, which I think is what we want to do, because when we're standing out as a leader, we're able to have that impact that we want to have. The program is really embracing these principles of simplify, transform, and perform through workshops every month, office hours, where literally you have access to me for an hour a month to tackle any kind of communication or strategic communication challenge you may have, as well as group coaching. As part of the cohort, we dive deeply into the content. There's also an online learning portal. All of the content that is covered, but also lots more is shared throughout the program. And then, of course, everybody gets a copy of the book Impact, because it's very much a handbook on how to embrace these principles. It looks something like this. You have these workshops, coaching, office hours, online learning. And every month we go through different workshop principles and content. We go deeply into the Canvas structure and process. We go into message refinement, storytelling and language, humor and improvisation. How do you integrate story into the Canvas so that it's natural? We look at performance, status, body language, how to get ready, and how to rehearse and pitch with confidence. Folks that have gone through programs just like this include Dr. Hunter at Boston Children's Hospital. And one of the things I've got to say about Dr. Hunter is he actually received an award last year for developing the Blink vision scanner that helps detect children with amblyopia. And I'm thrilled to have had the opportunity to work with him. And he takes the most complex content now and is able to connect with an audience in a very powerful way. My introductor today, Dr. Alavi, I've had the pleasure of working with Dr. Alavi, who is at the Mayo Clinic and has delivered countless impactful research presentations on the important work she's doing. I tip my hat to Dr. Alavi, and Floyd Marinesco is another leader. He runs actually an event business, but he's passionate about basic income, basically making the opportunity for all people, all members of society. So he actually created CEOs for Basic Income and has done TED Talks on the subject and has become an expert in how to equalize the economy. So these are the kinds of individuals, the brilliant leaders that come into the program. I do have a cohort that's starting in July. And so if you're interested, I'm not going to put pricing or anything up, but I am going to share, and I can put this here. And I'm going to drop it into the chat here. Let me just see if I want to make sure it goes to panelists and attendees. So first of all, this is, oh, I've got to type it. It won't allow me to print. It won't allow me to paste it in, but it's bit.ly /impact communication. That is the link there. And the other thing that and it'll take you to this site right here, where you can pre-register, and I'll reach out to you and we'll chat about the content and the program. And there's one more thing that I'll share with you. And I was chatting with Afsana about this yesterday. She mentioned this in the introduction. A year ago, or sorry, several years ago, 2 years ago, we went to Banff, where I hosted a speakers retreat. And if you're interested in that or the Impact Retreat, and I should explain this, we spent 3 days, everybody came with an idea and they left with a finished TED style talk that was captured on video and edited and shared and promoted. Thank you for posting that, I appreciate that. And so if you're interested in learning more about my next retreat, I'm thinking of doing it closer to where the conference might be next year. I'm happy to have that conversation too. So you can use the same link. It's okay. It's going to just allow you to capture the information. And so if you're interested in either the Impact Accelerator or the Impact Retreat, you can go to the same link that was just shared. And finally, if you're interested in other information, the book, you can go to impactbook.ca. I'll just write that in here. Maybe if you don't mind dropping these in while I take questions, that would be great. Impactbook.ca, or the tools, any of the content from the book, some that I haven't even covered here today, impactbook.ca/tools, and of course the pre-registration for either the retreat or the program. Just sign up and let me know, and I'll reach out to you. That is it for my content. We have 5 minutes, and I'd really like to take some questions before I award the free coaching as well as the book. So are there any questions that you have? I know there were hands up throughout, so I appreciate your patience. part. There we go. How do you unlearn? Elizabeth, oh, that's a really great question. How do you unlearn? So it's actually a fascinating area of study. The concept of unlearning is truly about creating space. It's about recognizing that there may be what you think are tried and true ways of doing things that maybe you can lose for the time being. And so what it means is creating space for new concepts and new ideas. First and foremost, how do you do it? It's a mindset, meaning I'm not rigid, I'm not set in stone, I don't have a fixed mindset on what it is that is true. And I'm not talking about facts, I'm just talking about approaches. So some folks might say, well, you can never tell, I would never tell a story in a presentation. And I've had that conversation with people. But after working with them and creating space for the opportunity and the potential that stories might have a space in different kinds of presentations, they have created the opportunity and allowed it in to, and that is unlearning. That is literally saying my belief and my systems that I used before, I'm revising them and reusing another approach. I hope that answers your question. Any other question? Any other questions? I know that there were a couple of questions earlier on. Looks like, yes, Norini, do you want to go off mute and you can ask your question? Oh, I see the Q&A buttons were here. Sorry, I didn't see that. Thank you. Okay, I can now see the questions. Terry asked, what if you aren't a funny person? Terry, I get that question all the time. Terry, you don't have to be a funny person. You just need to recognize that there's humor in relational participation, meaning we all have opportunities for humor in the experience and how we relate to each other. You know, I made a few jokes here today, nothing hilarious, but my assumption and what I look for when I'm delivering a keynote in person is I'm just looking for smiling faces. Terry, you don't need to hear the laugh. What you do need is to see some sort of reaction, which is a head nod or a smile. And if you get that, that's fantastic, but it doesn't mean it's not working. I want you to know that people, regardless, appreciate the effort. And if you think that something's funny and you think that other people don't think it's funny, they're going to appreciate your effort to use humor. So that's what I would say about that. And I do cover that in the program. We actually bring in a specialist just on improvisational humor and storytelling. We only have 1 minute left, and I want to make sure, thanks, Terry. I'm glad I made you smile. I want to, what about speed of talking? Oh, sorry, I'm going to try, Hiska had a question. How do you successfully communicate a message to an audience that has a different mother tongue and limited English? Well, that's a challenging situation for sure. What I would say is you need to ensure that you speak slowly. You need to use gesture and you need to use facial expression because people are going to read your body language. That's going to be a big part of it. But more importantly, you address the fact that if you're not following or you're not understanding, just let me know as we go along. And I'm happy to reiterate or repeat something if I haven't been clear. I'm aware that we are at time, and so I want to be respectful of the organizers. I want to be respectful of all of your busy schedules. I'm happy to stick around for a few more minutes. It's a lovely Sunday morning here, and I'm here, so I don't mind sticking around for a minute or two. But what I will say is I got a note from our support here that said we have the names on a program that he will pick randomly and share the screen. So let's go and share the screen to pick randomly the names. There we go. Thank you so much. Oh, we've got the picker wheel. Fantastic. So let's see. This is for a free coaching session. We'll do that first. Elisa, fantastic. Elisa, second coaching session. We'll do one more. We've got 3 spins. I feel like I'm on a game show. This is fantastic. Asmat, second coaching session. I'll be getting the emails and I'll be reaching out to you. Third coaching session. And then the final will be the book. Anu, fantastic. So 3 coaching sessions. I'll be reaching out with a Calendly link that you can book directly. And let's see who gets a copy of the book. And I'll make sure that that gets sent directly to you. We'll do one more spin. Very exciting. I wish we had a drum roll and sound effects, but this is just fantastic. Asmat, fantastic. Excellent. Congratulations to our winners. I want to finish by saying that if you take the time to simplify your message using structure, if you take the time to transform the language that you've developed, and the structure, and use language to engage in a deeper way, and you think about how you want to perform that presentation, you can have an impact. Today is a gift, but so is communication. And when you take that communication and wrap it up and share it with others, they're going to receive it gladly, and they'll share it and pass it along. And that is having an impact. Thank you all very much for your time today. I hope to get a chance to meet all of you in person in the near future.